This is a dying red light district out in rural Japan. Right now we're in an area called Kofu, and this isn't the only one either. I'm gonna take a little bit of a peek at this and others around the area as we talk about why this part of Japan and the culture is just completely disappearing. Now, before we get in here, usually I'll shoot these videos at 4, 5, 6 a.m., but today I've chosen what is supposed to be a bustling Friday right at lunchtime. If you come out onto the streets, we've actually got tons of people around going out for their lunch breaks. Now, obviously, a red light district and bars are not going to be open until the evening, but the sad thing about this area is even as evening rolls around, only one or two of these shutters will open, if any at all. And so these here are a variety of different nighttime entertainment clubs. Some of them have these narrow little staircases that reach up to the shops up there, while others are right here on ground level. Now, most places with lots of little bars and entertainment clubs, red light districts like this, will have this very specific type of small sign set up just like this. It's a really common occurrence. And as you can see, we've got security cameras monitoring the area and more shops coming back this way. Now, the simplest explanation for what these shops are and the services that they offer is, well, drinking and adult entertainment. Now, sometimes a little more adult and sometimes a little more tame, like conversation. And a lot of this comes from the old geisha stylings of Japan, where a geisha would be a master of conversation and entertainment. And so in Japan, there's what is called host clubs and hostess clubs. Here's the entrance to this side of it. And these places are where salarymen will go and entertain themselves or their business clients by sitting down and having drinks and with a well-dressed female whose job is to entertain and get them to buy more drinks, because she gets a cut of every drink that's bought, as well as her payment for her time there. And then the more they drink and the more they come back, the more money these girls make. Now, some of them obviously will offer additional services, if you will, and some of them are a little more shady in their approach. In fact, there have been many, many stories of people going into these hosts and hostess bars and walking out with bills that are thousands of dollars and unable to pay despite only having a couple drinks. And it's not just here that's dying out. You see, when we come out to this side here, we have what's called a shotengai. In fact, there's several of them through here, and we'll take a look at the area. A shotengai, or kind of covered arcade, covered shopping arcade, you'll often notice them with these up here, are common all across Japan. Now, another interesting thing is when we come out to different cities in Japan, you may notice, if you've been following along on this channel for some time with our live streams, that unless we get out to really rural onsen towns built up the side of mountains, if we come into towns like this one, the layout of a lot of them is very similar, if not almost identical. Like, the first time I noticed this, I had been spending quite some time out in Ehime and spending a lot of time in Matsuyama, and the wind is hitting pretty hard right now, so the audio is a little too windy. My apologies for that. But after spending some time in Matsuyama, I ended up doing a trip out to Kochi and noticed something really interesting. By the way, this is a little old movie theater, and there used to be a movie theater under the tracks of Shimbashi Station that I loved. You could watch 2 movies for something like 1,000 yen. And they would be older movies. They'd be movies that have been out of the theater for some time now. But it was still amazing. And the screen was pretty small, to be honest. Like, it was like maybe 4 times the size of a large projector screen that somebody would have in a big den or basement. But when I got to Kochi, I noticed that it wasn't all that different from Matsuyama. In fact, I could almost guess where I was going. So right now, as I said, we're out in Kofu. I think I mentioned we're in Kofu. And it's got the different areas and the shops broken down. But there's a very good chance that this map is considerably old. Like very, very old. Because this area here, a lot of these will open up still. Like we've got a little shop over here that's actually open. But when we get into the more red light district areas, a lot of the shops won't be opening up. So this reusal of, how can I put it? Reusal of city design. Does that make sense? This city design copy and paste. You can travel to Matsuyama or Kagoshima, Kochi, even cities like this. And there are certain things you'll know. Over here is going to be the Shotengai. Over here, there might be a Ferris wheel. There's probably going to be a Don Quixote down that road. And then down the road from the Don Quixote, you'll have a Coco's Family Restaurant. And then there'll be an Aeon shopping center over there. And even if you've never been there and you didn't have access to maps, you can, for the most part, figure it out. Even the street layouts are not too dissimilar. And this dates back to old Japan. There we go. So this one here, this is a girls' bar where you would come in just to drink with girls that look like that. And this dates back to old Japan. And I've actually been so interested in this for so long that I've been trying to do more research and learn about just how this worked out this way. And the simplest answer I can give in the live stream without making an entirely separate video, not live stream, premiere video that I can give without making an entirely separate piece of content about it at this point, is that it kind of comes down to how old city layouts and temples and shrines, where things needed to be located. It's not quite feng shui type stuff, but it's in a similar category. And so because of that, which roads were wide, which roads connected to what part of the city, all of this is heavily regulated and will kind of copy itself across from city to city, which is really interesting to see. So walking down this street here, it's not too dissimilar from this point on, for example, to even walking through Hiroshima. There are distinct similarities. Like if I told you we were in Hiroshima right now, it wouldn't be that far-fetched, other than, you know, the street names, city names, everything like that. But I do want to check out more of the dying red light districts as we talk a little bit about how they ended up dying in the first place. But even on a Friday afternoon right now, as we go through here, you'll have places like this, restaurants that are open, where I'm actually, this is new for me. I'm kind of curious about it. So the ceiling has all these ropes here, and all the ropes are just tied to here, and they're on a pulley system. So it would imply that they probably lift something up there. I wonder if it's for a festival that they often have. We've got a bookstore open over here as well. And then we have pretty much nothing but like afternoon restaurants and bookstores open. And you would think that, oh, when we get to the weekend, things will probably open up. But unfortunately, even as we get into the weekend itself, things will likely remain rather quiet. Actually, I think I want to come down this street right over here. And see what we can find. You can see a lot of it is still shuttered and closed, and one of the reasons is this Shotengai culture in much of Japan, even major areas like Tokyo, is starting to die out. Asakusa, for example, in Tokyo, has several rather large Shotengai, and they are not. There's a lot of shops in them that are just not open. They just remain closed all the time. No matter how busy it is on a Saturday or Sunday, they just never open up. But we've talked before about how a lot of Japanese shops will also run with just one shift. And so I was always bothered and often surprised. Sorry, I see a tunnel and I want to go down. Let's take a peek at least at what's in here. I was always surprised at how areas like Akihabara, for example. Akihabara. Okay, we've definitely got some more shops down here. And even some up here. You know what? Let me change camera modes for us for a second. There we go. We've got a much nicer night mode now that will enable us to come in and look at all of this. So we've definitely got some bars and whatnot down in here. I'm super curious about what's going on the second floor. Kokoro. So I was often very taken aback and somewhat frustrated by Akihabara, for example, the anime tech gaming capital of the city, arguably one of the capitals of Asia. Most shops don't open until around 11 a.m. And then they close as early as 6 or 7 p.m. And in doing a little learning about that, I learned that, we got a bit of flicker here. There we go. In doing a bit of learning about that, I learned that a lot of it is just because they run off of one single shift. We've got a shuttered door here. And then even more shops down here. But this gets really dark. So we're going to come down this way. And there's another little red light district around the corner that I want to check out. But you would have to assume that having your shop open for more than 11 to 6, 11 to 7 would probably be beneficial for business. But then again, because Japan has been like this for so long, not that many people expect to be able to shop at those times. And so, here we go. We've got this here called Minami Ginza. So, even in here, it's a bit of a red light district with, this one apparently is a poker house. Very interesting. And there are some fairly abandoned looking buildings over there. But let's start here. So this poker house bounty has the windows completely covered, but looks like it may be even open. Got laundry hanging out here. And this just connects down here to the Shotengai. But Japanese people have gotten so used to, oh, that spooked me just a little. Japanese people have gotten so used to not being able to go out and do purchases and spend money at certain times, even in major cities like Tokyo, that a lot of shops just don't open until 10 or 11 or even later, and then close surprisingly early. Whereas in the countryside, you'll have shops that are actually open a bit later, especially in like large malls and stuff like that. It'll stay open till 9 p.m., sometimes even as late as 10. But, oh, the wind is hitting again. We've got some tomatoes over here too. Just wanted to take a second to appreciate the tomatoes. But this does create some challenges. You see, there are even places like, oh, look in here. Japanese banks, for example, are famously bad for this stuff. Many Japanese banks will only actually, the whole basic Japanese banking system will only stay open until about 3 p.m. And so you need to get all of your banking done between something like 9 or 10 a.m. and 3 p.m. So if you ever go to an ATM in Japan, I highly recommend avoiding the lunchtime hours, because that is when the ATMs are going to get the most crowded. Now, even in Tokyo, there are areas with many little bars like this. For example, if you go to Shinjuku, there's the entire Golden Guy area out there. I mentioned Hiroshima earlier, and didn't trip, I swear, totally fine. Hiroshima also has many areas like that, but with just as many closed. And I thought this would be abandoned, but I don't think it is. Like, they've got fresh signs up there. It's just really beautifully overgrown. Kind of like it. Apparently this does absolute wonders for maintaining the temperature of the building, but I imagine it would probably come with a lot of bugs, and it goes all the way up there as well. Got a shutter here, and then I don't know if I would want to park here. I had borrowed a GTR Nismo Race Edition from Nissan at one point, and my biggest worry when borrowing this car was I had gone out to an area of Osaka called Nishinari to shoot like a $7 hotel in one of Osaka's kind of least comfortable areas. That's what we'll call it. And I had to park overnight, and I was so nervous. I wanted to park right where the security camera was parking right at the car. But whether you're in a place like Kofu, or whether you're going out to Hiroshima or Tokyo or wherever you might be, wow, there's a whole list. I'm so distracted. There's a whole list of all the establishments here, and it's all written out like this. I wonder if they would just light up individually at night as per like which ones are open. Also, there's a bit of an interesting shop over here to the side. Let's go down this way, check it out. So as you can see, some of these places are still open, but if you come over here, there is this adults only VIP room, and it has all this cosplay here in the window. There are these trucks that drive around Tokyo, and okay, that shop down there is open as well. Vegas, they just have staff standing outside ready to serve that lunchtime clientele. Now, some of these are going to be very different. These aren't going to be places where you go and drink. These will more likely be places where you go and select from a menu of companions that maybe they just spawn at that point. I don't know. They come to the shop. You choose a companion. I think we all get how that works. I like the entrance for this one though. But whether you're coming out to areas like Kofu or Hiroshima, or even if you're going out to somewhere like Tokyo, you want to make sure of a few things before you go into any small bar, because the small bars and restaurants give you the potential to meet some really interesting people. And there's way more light flicker here than I wanted. These lights are not adjusted for this area's frequency. The two sides of Japan actually have different frequencies, 50 and 60 hertz. So when traveling across the country back and forth, I've actually got to switch my cameras between like 24 frames a second, 25 frames a second. And there's been news through Japan and this area lately of just how much of this area has shut down, which, okay, we got ones that go up to the second floor here. But a lot of Japan is also starting to revitalize stuff. And we'll touch on that a second. But no matter where you're going, the things that you want to avoid when you go into these places. First off, if there are no prices on the menu, typically you should just avoid it. Unless you're not concerned at all about money and the cost of things, it's safer just to avoid it. Number two, if there are places that have a cover charge, or even if you don't think it has a cover charge, definitely ask if there is a cover charge. The simple action of asking if there's a cover charge, it might be like a 500 yen cover charge, which is completely reasonable. It's like $3 to $5. But you might also get stuck with like a 5,000, 8,000, like a $50 cover charge that you were completely unprepared to pay for your $3 drinks. And a lot of these places won't tell you until the end. In fact, one of the big culture shocks for a lot of people coming to Japan is one of the first times they would go to like an older traditional izakaya, and they get charged a table fee, and then they get this little tiny thing of peanuts or some kind of drinking snack that comes on the table, and they find out they were charged for their table fee of like 800-900 yen, and then we'll get through here with the flicker. And then they were also charged like another 800-900 yen for that little set of snacks that was put on their table. And this place is just, oh. But if you do want to come out and drink at small places and meet locals and connect with them like that, my biggest recommendation for you would be to go through something like my friends at Magical Trip. You see, got some work going on down here. Magical Trip has things like bar hopping tours. Well, they'll hook you up with a local guide who knows the area, who knows what's safe, knows what isn't safe, and will be able to introduce you to locals, and you can do drinking and learn cool things. The flicker bugs me. I had gone out, we were talking about Hiroshima earlier. I had done a bar hopping tour through Magical Trip. I've actually got it on this channel if you want to see what that bar hopping tour is like. It was more like a restaurant and bar hopping tour where I got to go out and meet different restaurateurs, try different bars and whatnot. And it was an absolute blast. My guide was fantastic, and it's kind of the safest way if you are at all nervous about getting scammed in any of these places. Then that would be what I would recommend. And we got an open snack here that they're actually doing work on, and that's the next thing that I wanted to talk about, is that while a lot of these places are closing down, Japan has also kind of changed the laws lately. And we've talked about that. How old, abandoned, unused properties can no longer just sit like they once did. So properties all across Japan are coming down. Oh, by the way, Magical Trip, huge channel supporter. I will link them in the description. This is not sponsored. I would mention them anyway. We do have sponsored videos though. And as I said, the Hiroshima trip, I'll link to that so you can check it out. But we were coming around this way. There we go. Now we're back on course. So A lot of these old abandoned videos, old abandoned buildings have now got to come down, and some of them are tiny. And when they get rebuilt, they need to take a smaller footprint for new laws for fire safety and everything like that. And so it's really starting to change the landscape of Japan. But right now, I'm doing this trip through Japan, exploring all these different little major, minor, hidden, abandoned, lost places. And this video is part of that series. I'll link the whole playlist. And inside of this, I've actually found quite a few places that were once just completely abandoned that are now being revitalized and rebuilt. Now, they can't do this with all places because, once again, we've covered this in great detail many times, but Japanese buildings, especially buildings used for business, have kind of a short shelf life. Their structural integrity gives after a couple decades, on average 3 to 4 decades, and can no longer be used. And so while property investment is a great thing in many countries, in Japan, a lot of properties will actually slowly lose their value over time, especially office buildings, which will have to be torn down and have something rebuilt in its place. But there are just as many, especially out in the countryside, that are still completely usable and are slowly being rebuilt. I came across a abandoned love hotel while I was driving through the streets and I guess through the mountains, and found out that they were actually gutting it for the purpose of rebuilding it into something. In fact, there's another location that I found that I can't wait to go back and shoot a dedicated piece on for you guys that has been beautifully repurposed into one of the most interesting repurposements. We'll call it a repurposement. I like that word that I just made, that I think I've ever seen. But this area here, like this Shotengai, is just a kind of main area for a main. It's oh my goodness, my English is gone, guys. I've just lost it. It's a torimichi. How do I say walking path? It's a, oh boy, English, it escapes me. Transportation route. It's a populated area. There are lots of like businesses and restaurants around here, but so much of Japan has seen struggle with the countryside. Now there are areas that are rebuilding, and there are a lot of youth in different areas of Japan that are trying to revitalize their areas. We've done a piece on that before and got to see some of the incredible work being done. But especially areas like these red light districts have started to struggle and die out for a variety of reasons. One of the first reasons was that Japan's laws regarding all of that really started to change in the past 20 or so years. We've got a used clothing store here. About 1,000 yen for a shirt here. Looks like that shop is open and bustling at least. And it looks like we have a stationery, that's the English word, stationery shop over here. But between Japan's overall laws changing, all right, let's take a look inside. See, again, this is what you're going to see all over Japan. Tons of shutters right now. And over the next decade or so, we're going to see whether or not a lot of this gets built up and revitalized, because these places can be grabbed cheap by young people who want to start businesses. And a lot of young people will leave the small towns and go out to, the big cities like Osaka and Tokyo and whatnot. But There's been a huge trend over the past half decade or so of many of these youth then returning to their hometowns and trying to do something to build it up, to revitalize it. Those childhood years are really formative, and if they have great memories there, they're going to want to go back and support their hometown. So a lot of them will focus on doing stuff like building events and festivals for kids and everything like that. And it is fantastic to see. But between the overall law changes and the changes in zoning laws, Japan's red light district are really dying out. And these more modern hostess bars, as well as luxury clubs, are also kind of taking the place of what were once the snack bars in Japan. And the same thing kind of really happened with the geisha. It's just a change in times more than anything. It looks like we've got another used shop here. You've got fairly interesting looking hanko. And I feel like a lot of this clothing is actually handmade out of old kimono fabric and reasonably priced too. We've got a jinbei here. But like, this here is just a skirt and a vest. And it's open. Absolutely bustling. I saw one customer in there. But again, the big question is, over the next decade or two, that's when we're going to tell how much of this is really going to change, how much of this is going to settle into the dying countryside of Japan. We all know that Japan is struggling to keep up with population. Not as many kids are being born, and there are hundreds and hundreds of theories. One of my favorites is I think I see another one I want to poke my head into in here. One of my favorite ones is when I do the tiny apartment videos. So many people comment, this is why Japan isn't having kids, because tiny apartments exist. And that gives me a bit of a chuckle. This blue moon, can we go up this staircase? Well, I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of this, because I'm seeing both sides. Being in Japan for easily a decade and a half, they've got it all written on here. Welcome to Blue Moon. Are you happy? Smile. Decade and a half in Japan. I have seen both sides of this. I have seen the countryside emptying out. I have seen people coming back to the countryside. I have met people who are doing everything they can to revitalize and who have love and passion for their area. But the media would want us all to believe that Japan is done. They can't keep up with their population growth, and the whole country and all the countryside will eventually fade away. And with 10 to 15 million abandoned homes throughout the country, that is a very easy thing to believe. But I'd like to hear your thoughts on it. Please let me know down below. What did you think of this area? Thank you so much for joining, and we'll see you again real soon.